The idea of this video is not to cause trouble. As discussed in episode 1, it is more to dive into truth, factual truth, evidence related to those facts and those truths, in order to have a discussion about something important, anything important, and especially important things in our country, in our world, and those two combined in order so we may move forward more efficiently, more effectively, and for the betterment of everyone, not only a few. The topic of discussion and the subject, as in the heading for the video, was of course in part clickbait, but not entirely, as we will now discuss and show. So, you have the ANC. They are the governing party of the country. They have been in charge for all of our democratic years, and they are solely responsible for how the country is being run, how its resources are used, how the money and the taxes are used, where they go, where the investment flows in or out of the country, and so on and so on and so on. We are a democracy. And we have what's called a capitalist and free market economy and trade model, which our country runs on, and most democratic countries run on, and most world countries run on, in order to produce trade and industry. Now, the ANC, it's true, was elected inside our democratic elections, and that is all good and well, but they are not a democratic party. The ANC were formed as freedom fighters, which led a rebellion against apartheid and such. And now they are a communist party. This is factual due to their policies, their actions, and the things that they do on a daily basis, yearly basis, and for all of the time that they've been in charge. Communism comes from Karl Marx. Karl Marx wrote a doctrine which is against democracy. So Marx wrote a doctrine called Marxism, and within Marxism falls communism, socialism, fascism, and that is where the link is between the ANC and their policies and their ways of ruling and political views and agendas. Not a democracy, which is what SA, South Africa, strives for, believes in, and is within. Again, the ANC were democratically elected. They were freedom fighters at that stage, mostly. But even within the freedom fighting and within their theology and policies and politics at that stage, they were Marxist, communism, socialist, fascist, other parties which also have these agendas are EFF, the newly formed MK, and other associated parties or other parties which have those words within them, within their names, or within their policy documents, agendas, and actions and politics. Democracy is what we strive for and what we have in our country and what is part of elections and our constitution and our rights and how we run our country. Capitalist means that you work and you trade and you make money according to a service delivered, a fee charged, and someone is willing to pay that because they value the fee and they value the service that you provide and the quality is correct, and therefore you trade, you get money, they get service. And the capitalism means, or the capitalist gets the money. Capitalism means to get money for service, not to be dependent, for instance, on the state for a social grant. And free market means that there are fair pricing, fair trade, everyone can trade, everyone has a say in how the trade happens, how the price is made. The price goes up and down according to competition and quality of product and so on and so on. Within communism and all of these brackets, which fall under Marxism, you also get words that are often used like totalitarianism, authoritarianism, dictatorship, and so on. What these all mean is that the ruling or governing party or group or person has all the power, all the say, and all the might within the organization, area, country, region, whatever. It is not a democratic situation where there is accountability, rule of law, fair law. Everybody has a say and a vote. Everybody has input. Everyone can lodge a complaint. Everybody can make and change or contribute or remove within a voting system, discussion system, round table discussion, different groups having discussions and making decisions based on votes or consensus, or you get the idea. Within all of these, which is the policy and the way of the ANC, one person or one group of persons have access to all the resources, have taken all the resources and all the power, and have all the say without accountability or law affecting them. You can see how the ANC jumps out under those words, banners, and descriptions. Now, because of that system and because of that lawlessness and non-accountability and not being able to hold them to account or hold them to law or challenge them, either in a voting structure, say rigged elections or non-elections, missing money out of the treasury, out of the coffers, out of the tax, out of investment, money given to the country, say during COVID disasters, 500 billion or million missing. What also falls then in a third sort of layer underneath this is things like criminal activity, so criminal, thievery, thieves, and corruption, the big buzzword of South Africa. Because there is no vote, there is no oversight, there is no action against when it happens, and so it can happen in this. It is not a democracy. It is not capitalism. It's not free market. But in this system, if you have one of these happening as a control body, all of these can happen. The ANC are factually, have been and are funded by Iran, China, Russia, criminals, and stolen money or assets or resources. Iran is not a democracy. Iran is within the Marxist list. The dictatorship, authoritarian, totalitarian, socialist, fascist, also within their religious approach, but it's not that. So all of this money, and that counts for Iran, China, and Russia as well. China is run by the CCP, which is the Chinese Communist Party. The word is in their name, and they seized power by force. They were not voted in. Russia as well. The USSR fell, and Vladimir Putin and the Russian government, state, dictatorship, communist, whatever party, took control as the country fell apart after war. They were not voted in, and they rule by power and corruption, thievery, criminal, dictator, authoritarian, totalitarian, all of these three countries. And then within them and within our own borders and other countries who influence and fund the ANC, once they emptied out our state coffers, I'll get to that now. Criminals, stolen assets, resources, and these countries, money to the ANC. So, what does a communist or communism in a governance do? Things like, so SA, let's look at our country. Communists come to a country or infect a country through politics or an overthrown government. They do things like empty the state coffers. You've heard these words. That basically means the money of the government, whether it be savings, retirement money, tax money, foreign investment, loans from countries or world banks or wherever, through corruption. And these categories empty the coffers by corruption and theft. They sink the economy through this behavior by taking the money allocated for development and squandering it, stealing it, whatever. And also then foreign investment runs away and avoids the country. There's increased unemployment. Due to sinking economy, no foreign investment, no expansion of business, therefore less jobs. And less jobs means less money, means less tax, means less investment, means less jobs. So let's draw the first of that just to remind us of this circle of darkness and death which occurs within these systems. Also, a decrease in education, a collapse in education, a non-investment in education, and a communist country or organization or party likes this because an uneducated nation, or group do not know or cannot see and cannot act effectively against all of these and what we are still going to discuss. So it pays them to not have good education. It pays them not to invest in education. It pays them not to have the education of the country improve and progress and go up. Because then they can further all these agendas and the more that we're going to speak about. These are only some of the factors. The list can go on. Let's look at something else. We've all heard of the BLM and the BLF, Black Lives First and Black Lives Matter and all that. It is a fact and is proven that these organizations are sponsored by communist and white-owned business and industry in order to disrupt a country in these and other factors and other sectors in order to increase the time spent in governments and the power asserted by the group or governance in order to control the country, its money and coffers. An uneducated nation which have no choice but to stay, work, try and survive, because you have what's called the brain drain, which we all heard of, where South African citizens, brain drain, left the country to go to another country, losing expertise, losing money, losing investment, losing stimulation to the economy because of good brains doing good work, and losing educated minds. Again, all added up to the circle, the little death circle, the little dark circle. An uneducated person, unfortunately, can be unaware, indoctrinated, either because their mind is open to it, their mind is not filled with correct information, they are desperate, they are trying to survive, they have no other choice, so they can be then influenced by whatever propaganda being specific, targeted, false or fake, or it doesn't have to be false or fake. It can also be just specific news or agendas propaganda by the ruling group into the uneducated individuals or nation to make them unaware, indoctrinated, unreactive, or, in the worst sense, hostile, cooperative in their suffering, and so on, by controlling what's called the legacy media or state media. So in our terms, the SABC, specific radio channels, specific newspapers that only print what the government says they should print. Now it's true that in South Africa, we do have both of these situations happening. And just because an organization has the word democratic or democracy or democratic anything inside it, or say that they are a democracy or democratic party or organization, doesn't mean that they are a democratic party organization. You have to look at their actions, their outcomes or results, and especially their accountability, whether they hold themselves accountable and whether other things like police or courts or citizens can hold them accountable, or even the media. And that has been one of our saving graces in South Africa, that we have both at the same time. But if one of these get out of control or get too much power, whatever that means in money or army or police, or just too many voters wasting their vote, or too little voters voting for the democracy of a country and rather voting for the communism or its associated subcategories, to give too much power to one entity, you no longer have a democracy. You have communist law, Marxist rule, communist rule, and all these subcategories are all one or the other one. And the voters voting or not voting affect this directly. That's why the vote is so important. Can we now see how it goes in a circle, perpetuating one way or perpetuating another way? Both under the banner of a democratic South Africa, a democratic new South Africa. But because of the way the democratically elected party is running itself, it breaks down society, it breaks down business, it breaks down investment, and it gets funding to do this in order so that other communist states may then abuse the country for its resources, its workforce, the people, its land, its geographical location, oh, there's no L, there's a location. Geographical location meaning the tip of Africa, the only good functioning country in Africa. Well, let's be fair, like we said in video number 1, there are other countries that are functioning quite well. But geographical location in the world, in terms of ports, coastlines, land, airports, and the access of our country to and from any other country in order for trade, investment, and so on, as discussed in video number 1. But staying on the topic, if the ANC are opening our borders still, which is one of the factors that come into these breaking down our system. So open the borders falls here, open borders. That's a fact everywhere in the country. All the borders are open, just like in America. Well, not anymore in America. They can sort that out, looks like it. And they disrupt our country, disrupt the country, which the ANC have done. They disrupt the country with their cadre deployment and corruption and communist, Marxist, socialist, fascist agendas and policies. Law and order falls apart and is encouraged and allowed. Our democracy is weakened, is weakened, which it is. But with our voters showing up and the GNU standing together, it strengthens the democratic side of our democracy by challenging the sick apple in the basket. Social services are also overwhelmed and drained and on the verge of collapse. Not only the state enterprises like Eskom and SIA and now all falling apart, but also SASA always being in trouble, always being in disarray, always being unorganized, always money missing, always money being stolen, collapsing the social services that should be there for those that should need it in a healthy democracy. It's not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when it is abused and encouraged and allowed to fall apart and be sucked dry through all of the criminal, thievery, corruption. Some of the other factors that can go into this list are infesting and breaking up of the army and police and security services. That is evident from IPID to SAPS and even the army. Totally ineffective, corrupt, more problems than solutions, ineffective in any and all circumstances, wrecking their own vehicles and ammunitions at displays, training, and deployment often being a disaster, burning down their own tents and camps. SAPS has a good side and a bad side, but very and totally corrupt. Not challenging anyone. I'm not trying to offend anyone. These are just facts and stats to get to the point of the video. They wreck the economy. They change policies and laws while they are in power in order to encourage all of this and to maintain power and to encourage all of this to happen, to weaken the democracy, to weaken the country in order to keep the cycle going. And so I put it to you, where have the black diamonds, the black leaders, the black community been in communicating some of this or all of this? Because they do know they are going through schooling and university and in the workforce and in business. Why in 30 plus years has this not transferred back to everybody everywhere? Why are the ANC still voted in year after year? Because of these factors, because of the collapse of social services, because of the collapse of infrastructure, business, investment, schools, and education. The main thing that I always go on about. At first, but not anymore. Not anymore. I put it to you, if you still vote ANC, you are either a communist, a criminal, corrupt and riding the gravy train, nihilistic, which means you want the world to be on fire and be gone. It means that you don't want to be here, you don't believe in anything, you want it all to be broken, and you want it all to be burnt up and away and done. Or you are unfortunately uneducated and you have been deserted and thrown away, and you've had their back turned on you by your governance and your people. Government, which is ANC, and your people. Why do so many still vote for these parties and other parties not named? I put it to you that in the new world where there is legal slavery and slave trading, because somewhere along the line these criminals figured out, these bad people figured out, you don't have to force a person to a place to do work and abuse them. If you can do all of this to them in a continuous cycle and pay them or put them on state welfare like SASA for no reason other than to keep them uneducated and dependent on the state for their income, only income, a small income, not even enough really, and that's why crime exists and thievery exists and further corruption exists, because of desperation in order to survive. And so it goes round and round and round and round and round and round. Thievery, corruption, theft, non-education, can't survive, must steal, SASA doesn't pay out, can't pay out, SASA pays too little, collapse of schools, collapse of universities, collapse of business, non-investment, money from other bad places to a bad place to run a bad system. And because of the lack of education and communication to everybody, including your own, the ANC are allowing South Africans to get stuck in South Africa, either dependent on a corrupt state which will collapse, if not for the other democratic parties and the other citizens who are pulling the line and doing their part to keep the democracy alive and healthy and push back, as I'm trying to do now and show. Accepting money from bad places to bad places to exert this communism on South Africans who don't know any better, aren't being told any better, have been deserted by their governance because the governors are only interested in power, 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 money, 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 and run away. The top ANC don't even stay in South Africa when they need medical care. They go overseas. Same for the EFF, same for the MK. How can they have so much money and so much success, but their brothers, comrades, and cadres are lost in the system, forgotten in the hills, and still live in terrible conditions without even water, lights, or a toilet, but must work and must survive and be available to work for nothing or be taken advantage of in New Age legalized slavery and slave trading to other countries who want to come here and have our resources, workforce, land, and geographical location as a point of power manipulation and posturing. And so I put it to you that the ANC are in fact involved in and encouraging and expanding New Age legal slavery and slave trading of South Africans and black South Africans who predominantly carry the worst of the worst weight, atrocities, poverty, non-access to goods and services, infrastructure, and a possible future of any kind, unless education and communication to everybody so that we may preserve our democracy and constitution, get the right people, and I'm not advocating for the Democratic Alliance or the Democratic this or the Democratic that, but democracy, capitalist, and free market, in order to counteract all of these elements and make the system go the other way. And then, if we increase that as a primary objective, education and communication, organically and by itself, the correct people and policies will be placed, will be allocated, will be voted in, will be placed, will qualify by merit, not by cadre deployment or friends of friends, or because one of the bad influences of our country instructs the bad governance of our country to place people in positions of power to make the bad cycle. And so, better education and communication to all, accountability, better voting, foreign investment, better education, reverse brain drain, which is occurring. People are coming back because of trouble in the outside world, and because South Africa is not in such a bad shape if you have education and money. But that's not true for everybody. Unfortunately, it's a disgrace. Then foreign investment comes back, then that goes better, then we get more money, then more education, better politicians and politics, better police, better army, better hospitals, better medical aid, more investment, more tourism, more people come back, people want to immigrate and live here, and there's brain drain from outside back into SA, from wherever, any African country, any European country, any American, Australian. If the wars break out that are looking like they're going to break out, and we take this moment seriously and together get the system pulling in the other direction, not only by money, because money makes problems. We can move away from this problem, which is why I drew your attention to this tonight or today. It just happens to be night here right now. And we can get back to democracy in South Africa by voting responsibly and voting, not just staying away, identifying these problems and words and policies and seeing through the mess and through the lies. Then that is how we can move forward, because it is true that democracy is not perfect. That's how we end up in a situation like this, and many countries have. It's true that capitalism is not perfect. It has problems in its hierarchies. Some make more than others. It's true that free market is not perfect. Things get lost, things get taken, people get taken for a ride, bad negotiations, bad deals can happen. But these three societal organization words or categories or ways is the best and most complementing and most effective that have ever been known by any civilization, any country of the world ever, with the most distribution of goods and food and medicine and services in the world under these banners. Not perfect, but best ever. This is factual and statistical. And under communism and Marxism and all these, like the Nazis and Mao's China further back, and other empires, under these types of rule and law and policy, the most people ever have been killed in the name of these agendas, than any war, anything that's ever happened on earth, any natural disaster, any movement, anything. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of millions of people being exterminated, killed, chased out of their country, buried, mass graves, and it still happens today in many countries. So that is a bit of a fuller picture, and some of the debates that I have with strangers, friends, pupils, older people, younger people, all the time. And we need to have these discussions everywhere in different languages and understand some of these terms and words so we can see what's going on in front of us, so we can see and hear and understand what we are hearing and know who's lying and who's not, and who's perpetuating what, that one or that one. And are you a citizen of a democracy, of a democratic South Africa, the Rainbow Nation? Or are you part of this mess, proven by all measures to be the biggest killer and thief and corrupt and dark matter and evilness of all time, ever, which has swallowed our governance, who started off as freedom fighters and then did not know how to govern because they were freedom fighters. And slowly the infestation happened, and then it got out of control. But we are in a moment, like we discussed in video number 1, where we can come back to this one, not that one, and increase these things and not allow those things. And look after these things and not choose to be this, so that we may not keep going in this destructive backwards evilness, where we will end up legalized slaves traded, trapped in our own country under banners we never ever voted for, due to a group of people who have lost control within a system that has never ever worked anywhere in the world ever. It has only destroyed countries and cost millions and millions and millions of lives. Money does not even matter when you look at the Nazis and Mao's China and what's going on in the Middle East, in Syria. And if you don't know about all these things, that is the idea behind this discussion, is so that you may at least have the overview and some of the words that get thrown around, and you can explain it and go back to it and put your own words and ideas in order to explain to someone else who might know more or less, who might have the same vocabulary or have less English, but you can translate this, you can explain this, you can draw it a little bit neater than I did, but there it is. And that is fact. Please click, like, subscribe, comment, contact? Want to do an interview? Want to share something? Want to contest this? Sure. Robust conversation and good, sound, robust, well-funded education is the way forward. It's the first and strongest pillar of any successful country. If you haven't seen video number 1, please do, in order to place this in context. And please know that I say this all with love and respect in order for us to start these conversations and have it available in some format that is simple, step by step, unchallenged by noise and shouting and whistling and screaming. And please know, if you want to be a communist, or any of these guys, you can never ever get into power because they don't allow transference of power free and fair. It's the guy with the biggest gun or the most money or the most evil friends who succeed and murder each other out in order to get back into power or to succeed the power. And even if you do manage to take over the organization, there will be no funding, no loyalty, no honesty, because it's all power, greed, and evil based. The last point I want to discuss, just having revised my notes I made before. It is true that our country has developed in terms of small things like new roads have been built, some RDP houses have gone up, there are new bridges, there's some new buildings, there are SASSA grants being paid out in total mess and disarray, and giving someone 300 or 400 or 500 rand a month to feed themselves is ridiculous. But from 1994 to 2024, there's a lot of years to have only those small things happen. The money that only Jay-Z stole from this country old Baba Kadudu Zane. And I'm attacking him as a person and as having been the leader of the governance, because it's factual. The money that only he stole and the foreign investment that was lost to this country only because of his decisions and corruption could have easily have built a house for every single person in this country. Not even to mention roads, hospitals, schools, universities. Free education would have been possible. Free education can't be promised on a broken system which is interested in power and thievery and corruption and stealing the resources and the money of a country. But here the Vitos messed up, and up to here the Blackos have messed up. That's fact. It's done. There's no way of arguing around it. There's no use arguing around it. But now, because of the way that we have survived as a nation, the proper South Africans, not the criminals, not the corrupt, not the communists. Us, the Rainbow Nation, now have a second chance or a third chance. And if we get this right, the potential of what we can build and have and preserve and provide for our future generations is unseen and unheard of on this continent and probably in the world. If we can just get our circle of action, influence, and decision and politics and education and communication healthier, one step at a time, one conversation at a time, one video at a time, one decision at a time. Explain it to someone, show it to someone, decide against it when you have the option and when you have the authority. And get the word out to everybody. Why voting is important, why your individual decision is important, why education is important and the preservation of education, and also all the other sectors and factors. But first of all, education and communication of the right ideas, not the wrong ideas. And when you have the chance, don't allow evil into your organization. Don't allow the devil a place at your table, in your house, in your business, in your foreign trade. And as we get our circle, our arrows correct, our security forces, our courts, our politicians, our governance, and our private citizens, everything and everybody will hold these things accountable and keep it in order. If the system self-perpetuates organically and with decision and with the correct input in the right direction, just as it has spiraled out of control in 30 years, 30 plus years, it can spiral back into the promised land, the land of milk and honey, where we are supposed to be, where we were promised to be by Nelson and the others before and after him. Have a think about that. That'll be the end of the video for today. And again, said with love and respect, unless you are in this camp, then I really don't care what it is that you're on about. Because you're not building a future for the kids, or for us, or for yourself. And that is blatantly, factually, evidently obvious. Thank you. See you for the next episode.